On today's edition of the Locked On Knicks podcast, we are once again playing buy or sell, including, do we buy that the new starting lineup is here to stay?
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Gavin, Schall. I'm your Saturday co-host of the National Locked On NBA podcast. He's Alex Wolfe, editor-in-chief of The Strickland, the greatest Knicks website in the whole wide world. You can check them out on all forms of social media over at thestrict.land. In case you didn't know, this is the Locked On Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day, your daily podcast on the New York Knicks, giving you the most detailed insight on your favorite team. At least, I have to emphasize, at least 5 days a week, because it's been more like 8 or 9 a week recently. So be sure to join thousands of other Knicks fans in subscribing on both YouTube and your favorite podcast platform for the best insight on your favorite team every single day. Alex, on today's show, we are playing our favorite game here, buy or sell. We're going to talk if the starters are here to stay, whether we buy Jalen, Brunson, and Karl-Anthony Towns should be spending a little bit less time on the court together, and whether or not the Knicks should continue to play an expanded rotation against the Indiana Pacers, or if that was just a one-off. We're going to get into all that right now. Let's get the game started. Buy or sell, Locked On Knicks edition. We start off. Do you buy or sell that the old starting lineup figured something out to close game 3?
Well, it's interesting. So first off, I thought of this before we started recording. I know that we stole this from Pardon the Interruption, but I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Around the Horn that just had its final episode over this past weekend. I don't think that I would have ever ended up in this particular job or wanted to become a sports person if not for that show. And shout out to them after like a legendary run. Anyway,
former guest Marcus Barahal, former Around the Horn intern. So shout out.
Oh, wow. I did not know that. Well, look at that. Well, that's pretty awesome. I'm really
Tony
jealous.
Realio is because they were in the same office. He would accuse him and his co-intern of stealing his candy, which they allegedly never touched. So that's fun.
I got to meet Reali and Tony Kornheiser and go.
Oh, sorry, Kornheiser. I don't mean to cast aspersions on Reali. Reali's incredibly nice for me.
Yeah, Kornheiser was a little grumpy to me when I got to visit the PTI set. I got to take a little field trip there one time. Anywho, I still love it though. I'd be grumpy too. He's an old dude.
I think it was a bit, but I'm not sure.
Either way, the old starting lineup figuring something out to close game 3. Do I buy it or sell it? I have to be definitive. I can't hedge. I'm gonna buy it. I'm gonna say screw it. I'm gonna say I buy it. Ultimate small sample size alert, but the old starting lineup somehow only played 4 minutes together, according to NBA stats in the last game. In those 4 minutes, 133.3 offensive rating, 50 defensive rating. That's an 83.3 net rating, which for those who keep it score home, that's really good. Granted, it was mostly just end game scenario, closing the game out. They did manage to do that. They did it nice and efficiently. And I think the big thing was that the communication between KAT and Brunson seemed to find a new level there. Now, do I think that this starting lineup has fixed themselves to the point of being able to play huge minutes, play the most minutes in the NBA together, and put together positive stretches against this Indiana Pacer team? I don't think so. That said, for short bursts, like without giving Rick Carlisle too much time to figure them out and to throw different looks at them, I think they can make it work. If they go out there with like a dedicated game plan, if they're like, okay, we're just going to switch everything. We really got to give it our all for like 3 minutes or whatever. Like switch everything, stick to your man, no stupid fouls, and, get it done. They managed to do that in game 3. So from that perspective, I think they have figured something out for bursts. That said, I mean, I won't spoil too much about the next question, but I don't know for sure if I'm on board with like, aha, these 4 minutes prove so much to me that they're ready to go and ready to start and play 35 minutes a game together again. I don't know if I'm quite there. I think I'm just at a point where that end game scenario kind of showed the best of what this lineup can do potentially. And for that, I'm grateful.
Yeah, I'm gonna sell it. We've said it a million times, but largest sample size of any lineup in the league. To your point, all those guys playing harder defensively, being more connected defensively. Like the play that stood out to me, you go to 1:15 left in the fourth quarter. I'm watching it as we do this. So basically, Tyrese Halliburton tries to attack Jalen Brunson, doesn't really get anywhere. Turner sets a screen for him. KAT switches, and then this is something the Knicks have gotten better with as this series has gone along, particularly in game 3, starting to incorporate the peel switch, right? So Mikal Bridges peels off Aaron Nesmith. He takes Miles Turner, so Brunson doesn't have to guard Turner in the post. Brunson switches out to Nesmith on the perimeter. Nesmith playing on a bum ankle, pumps his way out of the 3, drives, misses a floater that would have tied the game at 100. Josh Hart crashes down, gets the rebound. So that play epitomized what I think defined a lot of the second half for the Knicks, which was a better defensive effort in general and finding ways that when Brunson and KAT were both on the floor to like scram them out of bad matchups, or at least in that instance, they were able to get that done. That will certainly help. I think if you play, you know what? I was going to say something negative about Brunson and KAT playing together. Why don't I just save that for when we talk about Brunson and KAT at the top of segment 2? But suffice to say, I don't buy those two defensively. Alex, our next one. Buy or sell, the Knicks should stick with the new starters or pivot to something else?
I mean, I think we've both answered that a little bit already, but I'll say stick with the new starters. I know that the results weren't exactly like fantastic
Mhm.
in the first go round, but I do think starting Mitch is a good way to get your team off to a good start. I think that the Knicks have shown that they're notoriously pretty slow on starting with shot making. They're sort of like a, like a rock. You start rolling downhill. It takes a little bit for them to get going before they get up to terminal velocity. And so for that, I think it's valuable having Mitch out there and having really with him and KAT out there having two really good rebounding presences that could potentially get you second chance points. You're not losing anything in the shooting department, like as long as Mikal and OG can hit their shots from 3. And OG last game managed to do that. Mikal obviously it's been an up and down sort of thing, but like usually one of those two guys is going. And, really you just need the threat of them hitting those threes just to keep the floor spaced, as well as KAT, obviously. Like KAT hit a lot of clutch threes in that last game. Hopefully, I mean, we'll see if that's something they go to more, use Brunson a little more off ball to space for him. But I think that there are some ways that you can really make that lineup work. And especially if you come out shooting cold, put yourself in a position to play more of like a 22 to 23 Knicks brand of
Mhm.
basketball, where you have Mitchell Robinson out there to just gobble up all the offensive rebounds, either get putbacks for himself or kick it out to a shooter again for, another attempt at 3. Um, I think that's a really good way to start games. And for that reason, I think stick with the new starters, give it another game or so. And as Tibbs showed in game 3, he was a little more willing to experiment throughout a ton of different lineups. I think you sent me a tweet earlier about this, that he played like
Yeah,
7.
I have it right now. The Knicks ran 15 different lineups. 7 of those 15 had not seen the floor together at any point this season before last night. 8 if you include a group that played just one possession together. So it was I think one of our buddy, I'm trying to remember who on Twitter did this, but someone described it as if like, oh, I think it was Doug. Shout out to Doug. Just did a song with Ben Stiller. He described it as if Tibbs did like an ayahuasca trip before the game and just went through and then Prez described it as like basically like a year's worth of transformation, just stuff sped run into one game. So
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, props to Tibbs for trying new stuff. Maybe that stat can be a little bit a little bit like explained away by the fact that like Landry Shamet only played half the season with the team, and
mhm.
DeLon Wright like barely played any minutes and only played when a lot of people were hurt. But either way, still impressive with Tibbs to try some new stuff. So yeah, I'm sticking. Long story short, I'm sticking with the new starters, letting them have a little more time together. And I think it does have the potential to get you off to a better start than you could. I think that more what the Knicks need to do, and again, this is something that we'll cover a little bit later, but I think more of what Tibbs needs to do is manage how Mitch's shifts work and not treat him like how he treats every other starter. Maybe get him pulled faster,
Mhm.
and give him more short bursts so he can play at his best. But the starting lineup I like as a thought.
Yeah, I will buy this if it's a binary choice between the double big versus Hart starting. Yes, stick with it. Per pivot fade, the group we're talking about played 14 minutes together. They were +1 over those 14 minutes. And to your point, that was despite not shooting particularly well, though Indiana also missed a lot of open threes. So I went back and I watched those minutes closely because I was kind of curious to see how it looked. I kind of just love like how big they are, like outside of Brunson, right? Smallest player on the court is Mikal Bridges at like 6'7", which or 6'6", however tall he is. Like that's pretty fun. Like you just saw OG, like I like KAT got beat by Pascal on one play, and like OG is just able to rotate over as a low man and just like pin Siakam shot. That was a lot of fun. KAT and Mitch just posting up next to each other was really entertaining. Like where KAT just airballed the hook shot, and Mitch said, "No worries, buddy, I got you," and just dunked it in. I mean, they can bully Siakam and Turner, and like you can like if shots aren't going down or if like your late shot clock, you can just go to KAT posting up, and you can't really double if Mitch is on the other block. And I really don't know what kind of answer Indiana has for that outside of just getting a lucky bounce and getting a long rebound. It opens up KAT orchestrating up top for a little bit. There was a play where they were in semi-transition, Indiana to devote multiple bodies to Mitchell Robinson, and he hit OG Anunoby on a cut for some free throws. And then he hit OG again after Nembhard switched onto him, and he just zipped one in. OG had a great pump fake, got Nembhard and Turner both to bite on it. He missed the layup. Mitch cleaned it up. Like it's just fun when they start playing volleyball on the rim. Like you can use it to set like multiple screens for Jalen Brunson as he's coming up the floor. That's kind of fun. And you got the occasional like Mitch just like sealing Shepherd and dunking on him. That was really good. I do think Indiana will like it's possible they could just have an onslaught to start this game, right? They were 5 for 25 from three. They got a bunch of good looks against it and just missed them early in this game, like 2 or 3 pretty open threes where Mitch or KAT just didn't get out fast enough. So that would be my concern. So I would sell it in the overall context because I think it is very obvious that Deuce McBride should be the starter going forward. But we can talk about that in just a sec here on Locked On Knicks. But first, I want to tell you about our good friends over at Wayfair. The days are getting longer, the weather's warming up, and people are spending more time outside, which means it's the perfect time to refresh your outdoor space. Whether you're working with a big backyard or a small balcony, Wayfair is everything you need to make it feel more like you. Wayfair's massive selection of outdoor essentials makes it easy to transform any space into your ideal summer setup, from comfy conversation sets to sleek dining tables and outdoor decor. They've got it all at prices that fit your budget. You could grab a new patio dining set and some string lights from Wayfair to help extend your outdoor space. I personally love the mix of styles they offer. Wayfair makes it super easy to find pieces that match your vibe without spending a fortune. I'm personally looking for some cool deck chairs for the very small terrace I have here in Phoenix. Alex, I know you're shopping for some patio furniture. I'm sure we'll both be on Wayfair a whole lot, and delivery is free and hassle-free, even for big stuff. So shop a huge selection of outdoor furniture online this summer. Get outside with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. All right, let's keep playing buy or sell, Alex. Buy or sell that Deuce McBride should play at least 30 minutes. I think people know where I'm at on this one. I'm just gonna cite the number that I think defines it. In 3 games so far this series, out of Knicks players that have actually played in all 3 games, so out of the 7 that have been around in all 3, Deuce has a net rating of plus 25.4. The next highest guy is Mitchell Robinson at 8.8, and I don't think like. He had a great run of shot making to end the third quarter of this game. Like I think that stretch is underrated in terms of the Knicks coming back as they shut down Indiana. I think it was a 7-2 run over that stretch. The TJ McConnell offensive rebound and Midi was maybe the one bucket in there, but Deuce was just like hit TJ for a pull up, like put like a double between the legs, 3 at his eye, drew a foul on another pull up. Like his ability to just like go get buckets when Tibbs did something very risky, and when those like essential minutes with your season on the line with 15 minutes to go, no Brunson, no KAT, and those were his first 3 shots of the game, and he makes 2 of them, gets fouled on the other. I thought he was huge. I think defensively is huge. I think this team would work best with a grouping of 5 shooters, which is basically just him in for Mitchell Robinson with the starters. There are a whole bunch of numbers that back up him, Brunson, and KAT together. It actually works when Deuce is out there. So I would play Deuce McBride as much as humanly possible.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I'm gonna buy it. I think it's a pretty easy sell. Like the numbers, Tibbs like say you do what the game tells you. Well, sometimes you should do what the numbers tell you, which is that Deuce, regardless if he's making shots or not, is making a positive impact on this series. Now, does some of that go by the wayside a little bit if you're playing in more minutes and he can't play as like nonstop, balls to the wall as he plays normally? I don't know, but there's only one way to find it out, right? Like you got to play him, and obviously you just watch and see. And if it looks like he's getting gassed and it's affecting him, then you take him out. But I can't think of anything that would suggest that he can't handle a high minute load. I mean, this is the guy that we're talking about that last year, like, to his credit, went from playing like almost no minutes to playing like full 48-minute games when all the injuries hit in the middle of last season, and it carried that over into the postseason. Like the guy has, he's got the endurance, he's got the chops to play long minutes. I don't think it's like, again, to hint at another segment and another buy or sell a little bit down the line in this episode. Like it's not like a situation with Mitch, I feel like, where maybe he's better in short bursts. I think he's got marathon, DNA there to be able to go a whole, 30, 35, 40 minutes, whatever, if you need him to, and keep up a high level of play no matter what. Biggest thing to me too, at least to my eye test, other than just the confidence in the shooting and all that, is he has not been getting punished on switches like at all in this series. Like there's been
Mhm.
multiple times he even gets like Siakam on him, and Siakam tries to back him down or whatever. And Deuce is just like so crafty with his fast hands, being able to like disrupt the ball in Siakam's hands. He's got the length to still like contest his shots and make him feel it. And he's got the discipline, obviously, to not get baited into super easy fouls by these guys. I think a lot of that has to come into play with the decision to potentially put him out there more, because the argument from Tibbs would always, or at least what you glean from what he says, is always like, well, we have to keep a good amount of size out there. I don't know if Deuce brings that, but it's like the guy has the wingspan, he has the strength, he's holding up against these longer guys on the Pacers and still defending them well. I say keep him out there then. That if he's giving you the defense and the shooting that you need and not being overbearing with how much he needs the ball in his hands, then what could possibly go wrong? I think he's just one of those guys that is going to have a positive impact no matter what when he's out there. But Gavin, unless you had anything else to add, we could probably move to our next
No,
buyer
only
sell.
other thing I'll add is like I don't think Josh Hart, though, even despite his exceptional finish the last game, I thought Game 3 was his best game. You could argue McHale defensively was certainly his best game. I don't think either of those guys are playing well enough that they're like golden gooses by any means. Like McHale shooting 20% from three so far, just 2 for 10. Like if they were both playing at their absolute best, I think that would be a better counter argument. Right now, I wouldn't put either of those guys there.
I wouldn't either. But yeah, let's move to our next one. Another Brunson or KAT thing. So, do you buy or sell that Brunson and KAT can't play well together against the Pacers? I'm putting that caveat there because I think that there's evidence to suggest that they played quite well together at other points during this playoffs and during the season. But against the Pacers so far as a two-man unit, 109.9 offensive rating, 134.4 defensive rating with those two on the floor together. Now, granted, some of that comes back to the fact that they spent most of their time out there with the starter group together. So maybe just an indictment on the whole starters, but there are moments where other guys haven't been out there with them that still apparently have yielded these numbers. That's, again, a minus 24.5 net rating in 65 minutes together, which I think is one of, if not the highest two-man combo on the team. It's not quite the highest, but it's pretty close. It's like top 3, which go figure. But I don't know. I go back and forth on this one, Gavin. Where do you stand as far as buying or selling that KAT and Brunson can't play together against the Pacers?
Yeah, I would sell it on the basis of the can't phrasing. If it was rephrased as we should minimize their minutes together, I would buy that. Buddy, friend of the show, shout out to him. Not real name, obviously, but Art Vandalay on Twitter. He was responding to one of my tweets, I think. Oh no, sorry, this was just that was very egotistical. This was just his own tweet. He put together the on-offs from Pivot Fade for the entire playoffs, not just this series. KAT and Brunson together, a minus 4.3. KAT on without Brunson, plus 9.6. Brunson on without KAT, plus 9.2. So they are very, very good. And the Knicks are exceptionally good when they're separated, right? Which is a whole other conversation for this offseason that will need to be had. Like is it tenable if your two superstars can't play super well together to win an NBA championship? Well, the Knicks are 7 wins away from that somehow, despite that fact. Um, Against this team, though, I think Indiana is just too good at hunting both of them, which we've seen all 3 games of the series. Maybe second half, Cat was a little bit better in that respect, and Brunson at times has been better in that respect. But I think the fact that you put them into multiple actions and you either end up with Brunson, who just physically can't keep up, or Cat, who can't always mentally keep up with having to like traverse like multiple screens and switch multiple times in the same possession, I think it just stops being tenable. We just have an overwhelming preponderance of evidence at this point that Cat is not maximized offensively when he's on the floor with Jalen. And I think that's doubly true when you're playing him as the 4. Again, I would say the caveat to that is if you played Cat in a true 5-out and you ran a bunch of 2-man action between the two of them, all of a sudden, I think Cat would look pretty good with Jalen on the floor. But if you're going to pair them together with Mitch, like that just completely neuters Cat. We mentioned the numbers last night, but through 3 quarters, just 4 points in the fourth, 7 minutes without Jalen Brunson on the floor, without Mitchell Robinson on the floor, he rips off 20 points. It's not a coincidence. There's more room on the floor. He could attack Miles Turner one-on-one. Miles Turner has no chance in that matchup one-on-one. And Jalen Brunson, conversely, he benefits, I think, a lot more from Mitchell Robinson screening for him than Karl-Anthony Towns spacing for him, especially when Josh Hart is on the floor, because Hart is not in those screening actions, and then it's just Nembhard digging down, and Brunson is doubled anyway. So I think in this series, the way they're being played, especially with Mitch out there, I would not, even if you want to start that way, Alex, I would not overplay those lineups. My goal would be 24 minutes apart, 12 minutes together. They both play about 36 minutes a game, maybe a little more if one of them is super hot.
Yeah, I'm also gonna. I mean, I'll attack my own phrasing that I wrote here with the can't word as well. I also think that it's false that they can't play together. I think it's ultimately a skill issue at this point, like coaching wise. If you can't get these two to work together, but unfortunately, we've seen that like there's just not a high value placed on getting these two guys in actions together and just using one of the most basic plays in basketball that for the early part of the season was just phenomenally dangerous between these two, which is just a simple pick and pop, has not been utilized like hardly at all in this series. And you could force so many difficult decisions for Indiana with that if you just started utilizing that more. I don't understand why the Knicks aren't. The fact that you've had Siakam on Cat a lot, especially with this new starting lineup, the fact that you have, like Nemhard on Brunson, you can generate that switch. Suddenly you're putting Nemhard in an uncomfortable position of having to guard someone much taller on the perimeter who could potentially get a shot up over him, though we've well documented the reluctance from Cat to get shots up over smaller defenders for whatever reason. Maybe it's his release point. I don't know, but he's not super willing to like just shoot over a guy who's 6 inches shorter than him for whatever reason. And then Brunson, if he gets Siakam on him, that's your opportunity to potentially get Siakam in foul trouble. Potentially just attack him and beat him off the dribble, whatever. Although Siakam has had a very different rule book through these first few games with the refs, and I think for whatever reason he's the one guy on both sides that's been given like full benefit of the doubt for every single game, like with the push offs, with the amount that he's allowed to swipe at people, whatever. I don't know what's going on with his relationship with the refs. So maybe that's not something you want to get into. They'll probably start calling offensive fouls on Brunson against Siakam or something. I don't know what would end up happening there, but either way, I'm selling that they can't play well together. I am kind of buying that they're probably not going to play as well together, and you should try to separate them a bit and let them each kind of cook separately, because that's just kind of how things operate with Tibbs's preferred method of just kind of having Brunson work with the ball in his hands, having Hart generally set the first screen, or Mikhail sometimes lately, or even OG, like anyone but Cat essentially. He's okay with setting the first screen to get the action going rather than Cat. So as long as that continues being the case, they probably shouldn't be playing together too much. But Gavin, we got a few more to go through to buy or sell here. So we got 4 more by my count on the dock here. So we'll close out with a little more of a lightning round to end the episode here when we get back in just a moment. All right, we're back in to keep buying and selling, going into game 4 against the Indiana Pacers. And, the Knicks, they got a chance to potentially even this thing up, turn it into a 3-game series. with 2 games at home. If they win this game, the great equalizer, just winning on the road, especially if you lose all your games at home. So let's continue buying or selling here. Gavin, do you buy or sell that the Knicks figured something out on defense down the stretch against, well, not just down the stretch, for the whole game against Indy in game 3, held them to 100 points, obviously much less than the 138 that they scored in game 1 and then the 114 that they
14.
scored in game 2. So a pretty huge amount lower than those first 2 games at the Garden. While the Knicks, I mean, at least compared to game 2, kind of had roughly the same offensive output, just managed to hold them to 14 points less. Do you think they've really figured something out here, or do you think it was just poor shooting from Indy in this game?
So I'll buy it. I'll run through the caveats. You noted it. Indiana 5 for 25 from 3. Aaron Nesmith gets hurt. Then this has been a trend for them. Obviously, first 2 series, they win the first 2 games. They get blown out in game 3. Obviously, this was not a blowout, but it was a second half blowout for the New York Knicks. And then they blow out the other team in game 4. So this has just been something that's happened to the Pacers. So we should note that. We should record that. That being said, I do buy it because I think the Knicks figured some stuff out. I mentioned the peel switches. Like I just thought like the Knicks defensive IQ and ability to like execute like somewhat sophisticated concepts defensively was way up. And I think that's really impressive because Tom Thibodeau has not asked them to do stuff like that a whole lot this year. But we even saw like Brunson at one point, like had one to get out to Halliburton. Shamit on one play was beat by Halliburton. Mitch stepped up, and then and then someone had to like cover for Mitch as the low man on Tony Bradley, and then you see Shamit make a rotation 2 spots over to Nesmith, and Nesmith ends up missing like a tough corner 3 at the end of the shot clock. I mean, Shamit was like him and DeLon Wright were like honestly the 2 that stood out to me as just difference makers in this one. Like Shamit on like just looking back, like on the possession that ended with him stopping Obi. Like the beginning of that possession is Shamit holds up versus Andrew Nemhard, and then he fights over a Tony Bradley screen. Josh Hart has a dig that forces a kick out to Obi. Hart recovers to Obi, guards him. Then it's a dribble handoff back to Nemhard. Hart switches onto Nemhard. Then it's the entry to Obi from there, and that's when Shamit draws the offensive foul that we talked about last night. But it's just like those 2 guys like stringing together multiple efforts, right? Like it's IQ, it's foot speed, it's strength at the point of attack, and I thought that was a theme across the board. I thought they 3 games in started anticipating like where the next pass is going to go. And you saw a couple times where Tyrese Halliburton was making passes that were resulting in wide open threes in the first 2 games. And now DeLon Wright is in there picking it off. Mikal Bridges is sinking back and picking it off. And they're sort of just sensing where it's coming from. And you combine that with just flat out better efforts and better execution, I thought, from the 3 wings, like all of Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, and Josh Hart to various degrees had good, to an OG's case, is great defensive games. I think you combine all that, plus just playing Mitch a little bit more is always going to help, and KAT holding up better in the second half. Like it was largely just a much better effort, much better execution, higher IQ. And I think to Rick Carlisle's point, you play better defenders more minutes. That is quote unquote figuring it out to some extent.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I think that they just, in terms of figuring something out, I think it was just better better anticipation. Like I don't know, it seemed like a lot of what made the difference in game 3, and maybe it was just so simple as fresh legs, but it was just them or having more fresh legs throughout the game by extending the rotation, but just everything about their rotations was crisper. They were recovering better to the corners. They were recovering better off of, what could have been blown coverages, what have been blown coverages in the first 2 games where, the Pacers were just, they were smart about it. They were running guys around on screens. They were starting a lot of their actions from the above the break, and then, having guys run around just to tire the Knicks out essentially and like confuse them. And it was succeeding, but they just did a better job of reading it. They did a better job of sticking with their men. They did a better job of contesting out to the corners, and at least like paying lip service to a contest, by getting out and getting a hand up, rushing a guy just that little bit to get him out of his rhythm. So I'm buying that they figured something out, but I think a lot of it just comes down to effort level. And, maybe part of that, maybe part of the rationale, I don't know if Tibbs is thinking this granular with it, like psychologically, but maybe part of it is that he played 2 guys that have barely played this postseason, or in the case of DeLon Wright, barely played this season period, other than those few games where he was kind of forced to. And by putting guys out there who he knew were going to have to give it everything that they had just to try to earn their place on the floor, and maybe that inspired everybody else to kind of do the same. I don't know, but either way, that kind of leads us to our next buy or sell, which is, do you buy or sell that Shamit and Wright earn themselves rotation minutes for the rest of the series? I'll just give my short answer to this one, which is I buy it 100%. I think it worked. I think the campaign unfortunately lost his rotation spot just by virtue of not playing very well since like the first game of the playoffs. And that's tough. I really thought that, after that game, I was like, wow, we're about to get the same campaign that played for the Sixers last year, but something's clearly off with him right now. And you can't really afford to give him decent minutes at this particular juncture. In lieu of him, I think give it to Shamit and to Wright again. Give them a few more minutes, and maybe cut back a little bit once Deuce hopefully won't be in foul trouble in the future games here, so you can cut a little bit off what they played in Game 3. But I think they've earned themselves at least like 5 to 7 minutes apiece for the rest of the series, if not more for Shamit, honestly, because I think he feels a little more of a need of consistent shooting, movement shooting, and a guy who, like you just highlighted, actually had, I think, one of the best defensive games on the team in Game 3.
Yeah, I buy it for all the reasons you just said. I think the only concern we've talked about a lot throughout the year, I think Shamit is pretty good against smaller guards, and honestly, maybe outside of Deuce, like the best option on the team in those matches. Maybe DeLon Wright too, though TJ cooked him a few times. I think it would be bad if you got a bigger wing on him. Fortunately, Indiana does not have a lot of those right now, which we're going to talk about in a sec with Aaron Nesmith. Like Pascal Siakam is a nightmare switch for him, but Pascal Siakam is a nightmare switch for everyone on this team, including OG Anunoby somehow. So I'm with you. They should both play. All right, buy or sell. Aaron Nesmith not playing or playing impaired substantially changes your outlook on the series. Obviously, like there are gradations to impaired. If he's 90% of himself, do I think that substantially changes the series? No, but if he's out there hampered, Alex, I think it changes everything. I think it sort of hurt them at times down the stretch that he did not have his same verve. Obviously, he's pretty much single-handedly won them game one. And we saw what he can do at his best and how he can, like, at this point when you're down 2-1, right? A guy putting on like one more just insane shooting stretch could essentially be the end of your season if he's not capable of doing that. That really affects things and makes the Knicks' lives easier on the defensive end of the floor. Offensively, maybe even more so, because I thought even if you want to say there were some fouls in there, he was incredible battling through screens. Stan Van Gundy did a good job highlighting on the broadcast. Without him, they don't really have a great option on Jalen Brunson.
Yeah, I think, I mean, if Neesmith can't play, that's a huge boost. I mean, the guy won them game one. Like without Aaron Neesmith, the Knicks are up 2-1 right now. So that's one thing to to consider here. But yeah, I think that, if how he was playing towards the end of the game is ultimately what he is for the rest of the series, I think that helps them greatly. I think that he's one of their best defenders, and uh, you know, eh, has been doing a good to decent job on Brunson. I don't know that, I think maybe it's getting a little overblown, the impact that he's had on Brunson. I think that Brunson for much of game one destroyed him.
Mhm.
And he managed to figure something out down the stretch of that game, but I don't know. I mean, he seemed good enough to still throw his hands up every time he got called for, committing a foul at the end of last game. So I guess he's not hurting that bad. Lastly, real quick, we'll just make this quick hitter because we did tease this a little bit. Do you buy or sell that Mitch is playing too many minutes? I'll just make my plea real quick. I don't think he's playing too many minutes. I think it's just you need to change how you distribute them. Don't have him out there for like 10 to 11-minute stretches each time. Put him out there for like 7 minutes to start the game. Make him the first sub out. That allows you to go back to the Tibbs's preferred starting lineup from the whole year too, which I'm sure he would love. Or throw Deuce out there. Maybe bring out Mikhail and Mitch together, or something like that. Throw Hart and Deuce in there and let that group cook a little bit. Whatever you want to do. Either way, I think you have to treat Mitch like like a burst fire. Like if you're playing Call of Duty, right? You don't want to treat him like the fully automatic. You want to treat him like the burst fire gun. Like you want to just throw him out there for a little bit, let him go crazy for a couple minutes, and then bring him out, let him, catch his wind real quick, let him go back out there, go, 100%, like balls to the wall for 7-8 minutes again, and then bring him back out, so on and so forth, leaving open the door for him to potentially close the game as well. Because I think there are certain games where you're going to want him out there with the rebounding presence, with the defensive presence and all that to really impact things like in the fourth quarter and potentially late in the fourth quarter, depending on if they want to bust out Hackimich or whatever, which you kind of have to unfortunately always have a contingency in case they try that. But I don't think he's playing too many minutes. I think it's just you want to avoid stretches like when Tibbs had him playing like 16 straight minutes the other day, for example. I don't think that's particularly useful for Mitch at this particular stage.
Yeah, I buy it as well. He was clearly gassed at the end of his first run, led to a Tony Bradley seal and transition bucket on one of the guards, and then was like gasping for air near the end of the third quarter. So I would change how he's played as well. And that'll do it for this edition of Locked On Knicks. Buy or sell. We will be back maybe with a little bonus episode tomorrow, but if not, certainly after game 4, hopefully talking about a 2-2 series. Until then, be good. We'll talk to you soon on Locked On Knicks.